Hello, Jerry.
Hello, hello. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, why?
No, I have to turn it off. I'm just trying to get things going. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Oh, 70 hours it will be. I have a call from now until 11.
Oh, okay. That's
So I probably will take the next one in on mobile or won't be there for the whole thing because yeah,
yeah,
it's
to
the
be
I
honest.
annotate. How is your conference been going?
Oh, the Waze.
Hmm?
Yeah, Waze. Talking about the web one at
Yes,
Southampton.
I'm talking about the web one. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, 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 yes.
Yeah, it's been good. I haven't been to all of them. They're not all relevant to me, but the ones I've been to have been very interesting.
Hmm.
So
Well,
yeah,
this I annotate was amazing. Is amazing. So it's quite something. So uh, I think they're really going talking about the future of note taking, the future of network thinking, PKIM, and it's all converging. So it's quite something. Yeah.
that sounds very interesting. I'm going to turn
And
my video camera on in a bit. I just have a
yeah.
few things to organize. Hi, Tim. I see you've joined us. That's great.
Hi there.
Hi.
Just wait a few more minutes and then maybe have some introductions.
Sure. Believe me, I've got plenty to do.
Yes, I believe you. So, Tim, first of all, where are you in the world? I didn't get an impression last time we talked.
Um, I will do better than tell you. I will show you. Give me a second. I'll show you the view out of my window.
And then we have to guess the continent.
Yes. So that's what I can see.
So, guys, judging by the structure of that fence, what country are we in? Right. So, not everybody's here, but that's always the way. So, let's start a little bit. Um, Tim, you are the newest member of the community. Do you want to spend a minute to remind everybody who you is?
Yeah, sure. So
Oh, hang on. Vince coming in, so I'll just introduce you to him so you can do your introduction. What a strange profile picture you have today, Vince. Vince, you have a new and strange profile picture. That's most definitely not you.
Well, let me see what it looks like. Hold on, I'll turn it off. Yeah, well,
It's cute, but I don't think it's you.
it's no, I was rejected. I tried to get in to this call and it said, we didn't like your email address.
Oh,
So buzz off. And that's the first time that's happened. I have an account for my wife's book club on Zoom. And there's a woman, that picture that you saw, who runs the book club for Sigrid. So since I set up the account, I have the access to it. So I just used that to convince Zoom that I was legit.
most random thing ever. So, yeah, wonderful. So I think most of us are here, and Tim is the newest member of our community. So, yeah, Tim, if you don't mind doing a minute intro, that would be great.
sure. Yes. So as some of you may know, especially by looking over my shoulder here, where that's one of my carvings in minority or indigenous writing systems. So
Wow.
I'm the founder of the Endangered Alphabets Project. That is actually a proverb in Thai Tam, also known as Lana, from northern Thailand. And if I were to move my laptop more around my room, you'd see there's pieces of wood everywhere. So yes, I I started the Endangered Alphabets Project about 11 years ago. And in fact, I started it as a carving project to draw attention to the issue of scripts and texts that were being forced out of use or being abandoned by their cultures of origin, which is, of course, an issue of human rights and social justice. And increasingly over the last 10 years, I've become sort of more activist in terms of supporting and promoting cultures who have a writing system that has become marginalized by either by a global or regional or even a sort of a neighboring system. And that has also involved creating educational materials, or most recently games, to reintroduce or to teach the writing system and the culture associated with it. So my most recent project, or my current project, actually is a tabletop game in that takes place in the traditional Mongol lands, and uses figures from Mongol history and mythology as a way of either introducing that incredibly rich culture, or keeping it alive in areas where it is being suppressed or marginalized. And I'm really interested in the future of text because I'm sort of actively involved in this process, both of revitalizing text and the culture that created it, but also things like sort of the political implications of what happens when you have a minority culture whose members can text each other in their traditional writing system, thanks to, the creation of a digital font for their Android keyboard, rather than having to go through a language or a script that they identify with their colonizers or their conquerors. It's really an extraordinary thing that's happening in various places all over the world right now, and has been happening at an accelerating rate over the last 5 to 10 years. And I find absolutely fascinating, and I get involved in that whenever I can. So there are many things happening, and right now the one I'm just beginning is the attempt to create a catalog of the world's writing systems as a way of assessing degree of health or threat of each of them, which is something that's never been done. And this also helps to raise people's understanding of the importance of text and writing and its relationship to culture, which is something that has been, I think, vastly underrated for the last 100 years in particular. So I'll stop there.
Frode, it's Vint. Is it all right to ask a few questions?
Yeah, please do.
Well, I'm more concerned about Frode's intent of the meeting today, as opposed to my normal, holy crap, I have a whole bunch of questions of whoever just spoke last. So, Tim, is that okay? Frode, is it okay if I pursue a little bit what Tim just...
I think it's good that we do some questions on this, because a main topic today is who else to invite. And Tim Brooks has joined us, which is fantastic. And he represents a whole new avenue for us to pursue. So I think that would be definitely worthwhile, Vint. Yes, please do.
So I have, I think, 4 specific things. First of all, there are some other examples where language has been expressed one way and then forced to be expressed another. Turkish is an example, going from Arabic to Latin. And that was a political move on the part of Ataturk. Mongol was forced into Cyrillic. I assume that it must have had a written script prior to that, but I don't know what it was called.
Right. So the Mongol people nowadays live in mostly in three countries, in Russia, in Mongolia, and in China. They see them as being a pan-Mongol land, which is very, very important and very dear to them because, of course, you know, they were once the most powerful nation in the world. In Russia, Mongols have been forced not only to use Cyrillic, but also to speak Russian. There are local efforts in Buryatia to reintroduce Mongolian calligraphy and to speak in the Mongolian language, but it's very much a minority. In Mongolia itself, since roughly speaking the Second World War, it's been so heavily influenced by Soviet policy that even though they speak Mongolian, they write it in Cyrillic. But the government has decided that as of 2025, they're going to reintroduce the traditional vertical Mongol script called Bichig, which is something that, of course, I welcome immensely. And the script has tremendous depth of meaning for the people, but the vast majority of them cannot read or write it, except in a very simplified fashion. In China, ironically, that the area that the Chinese call Inner Mongolia and the Mongols called Southern Mongolia, the script has been, it's been sort of an oasis of protection. And in addition, the influence of Chinese calligraphy has meant that Mongolian calligraphy, which I will show you. So this is a work in progress of mine right now. So this is really, really beautiful.
Wow.
It has the same kind of expressive drama as Chinese calligraphy, but it's also used in combination with depictions of traditional features of Mongol culture, like the horse. So you'll get the word for horse, you know, sort of shaped around a horse. And starting last summer, the Chinese announced that schools in Inner Mongolia would now have to teach Chinese, initially in a few courses, a few very strategic courses like history. And it's clearly the thin end of the wedge. And it's going to be an effort to do what the Chinese government is doing elsewhere, which is to turn its minorities into harmless tourist attractions. And in doing so, to denature their sense of identity. So my work with Mongol culture is really an effort to revive Mongol language and script in Russia and Mongolia, but to protect the existing uses of language and script in China.
So Tim, there's a chat feature on this call. If you can find it, would you mind putting your email address in the chat? I want to follow up on a couple of other items, but I don't want to chew up the time. I'm very, very interested in what you're doing. Thanks for.
Thank you both. You know, this is an important avenue. Valentina and I had a call with a journalist to promote author right before this. And he asked what we're doing about accessibility. And I think that what Tim is working on is at an end of accessibility, you know, identity and how you can express yourself in different ways, because the Latin alphabet is nice, but it certainly isn't everything. So there is a lot we can learn from this. So it was interesting to have this back to back today. Also, the thing that, well, first of all, as some of you know, and it's a recorded call, so I can't say everything, but there is an opportunity that maybe Visual Meta will be appended to a selection of important documents. We're just waiting for the acronym company group to come back to us, and academics take a time, and it's excruciating, but there you go. Once we get a reply, we'll get a reply. But because of that, Jacob and I have decided to do an iPad version of Reader, for two reasons. One is you will also then be able to access Visual Meta on an iPad. And secondly, because of the architectural changes, it means that there will be a lot more code share between author and reader. And as a result, we can then release accessible code for anybody to parse Visual Meta for whatever software they have. So it's going to be quite a big and expensive operation, but if we're serious about Visual Meta, it cannot be a little hobby thing. It has to be accessible to anybody who wants to add it, and that's the way we're going about it.
Well, it's been just one other thing which has caught my attention just recently after looking at some machine learning mechanisms, GPT-2 and GPT-3 in particular. I've been very slow to recognize this, but it dawned on me as I was reading this that the transformation of text into digital form opens up just an absolutely astonishing universe of processing that is otherwise inaccessible. And I think I just wanted to expose my poor vision by saying that as an example of that, if you look at what GPT-2 and 3 have done, they basically have taken huge bodies of text and they are implicitly learning factual information and relations because of the similarities in the various pieces of text that are absorbed in the system. And I had trivialized it at first as if this is just another way of getting a million monkeys to type all at the same time, hoping that one of them will produce another of Shakespeare's plays that he hadn't written yet. But in fact, it's deeper than that. And the fact that they're extracting knowledge out of relationships, out of similarity, out of things that occur in common relation to each other, even with distances apart, not just word adjacency, but word relationships, is a very interesting way of discovering knowledge, but it also discovers falsehood. And so I really, the monkey analogy may not be totally wrong, but it's a really interesting way of capturing what I'll call factual information, but in this very peculiar form, which is predictability.
It reminds me of the infinite library, where if you have all of the letter combinations, then it might eventually produce something as well.
Exactly. And
yeah,
there's an old joke that the Bob Newhart used to tell about the guy that was watching all the monkeys in case they produce something useful, and he announces that he thinks he's found something, and he's reading what the monkey is typing: to be or not to be. That is the Grisornen plots.
I think there is some depth to that joke. But Vint, maybe people at the Google AI research, maybe somebody there would be interested in both contributing to the book and maybe seeing how we can push some of these angles?
Very possible. And having just steeped myself for the last couple of hours on this topic, I'll be happy to follow up with them.
That would be great.
Yeah, I was going to mention somebody from either GPT-3 community would be incredible to talk about the future of text and the impact that GPT-3 has been having. One of my developers recently managed to get access to GPT-3, and the things that we're testing, throwing information at it, it just spits out really amazing things. That it's like a brainstorming session, but with with all these connections that aren't really visible to the naked eye. So it's a really great tool to come up with ideas and to see connections where you haven't seen it yet.
But not to get too deep into this, but I think what we're seeing is a manifestation of similarity. And this is also true, by the way, of the website that generates faces of people that never existed. Again, it's statistical similarity. And we should be very careful about misunderstanding the nature of similarity. There's nothing that guarantees that because something looks similar to something else, that there is in fact a deep connection between them, or that if the one thing is factual, something that's similar might not be, and yet it's maybe hard for us to dissuade ourselves of the strength of one versus the other. So I'm nervous about GPT-3 and some of the other mechanisms, because they may mislead us into conclusions that are wrong, but don't look that way.
Yeah, I mean, ethics definitely comes into this at some point. Jerry, yeah?
Can I just, could I ask a quick question? I think I read this 3-4 years ago, so it may not be the case, but something like 10% of all queries coming through to Google every day are things that Google never seen. Is that
Yes,
still the case?
it's still 10 to 15% of the
Because
query.
that is remarkable.
It really is. It's
What
astonishing.
does that mean? I don't understand.
What I mean when I type into Google, what is it? Noesis universalis. I just came up with it. Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, it just won't be there. There won't be a single thing. So
Okay.
if you come up with a meaningful combination of words, which is deeply meaningful in this case, you won't have that word in our scenes. And that is the whole point, is that as we expand our knowledge, we do come to adjacency to things, which we can try to articulate, but they are really deeply non-random. So that I thought, anyhow, I'm glad to hear that it's still like that. Yes,
it still persists, and I think that's partly because we have an expanding body of content, which is implied by your comment, and what happens is that people begin to query that expanding body, and that's exactly why the statistic comes out that way.
And if I just say one more sentence, this is Frank Herbert, so beautiful when he says, well, think about it, knowledge is a ball, and the way it expands, the surface of it grows, which is the thing that we don't know, or at least we know that we don't know.
Is that where that comes
so the
from?
more you know, the more you become aware of things that you don't know. I just love that.
Totally.
I didn't know that was Frank Herbert. I was about to bring up this little thing and make exactly that point. I just couldn't remember where. So thank you, Jerry.
No, it's Frank Herbert, and actually in a video, in very rare recordings. So it's I mean, just amazing. I mean, this is, yeah.
This explains something else. It's why the older we get, the stupider we feel.
Speak for yourself.
Well, you're not there yet. That's why.
Yeah, no, that's true. So with the, kind of going back to the book, we have a couple of things. We need to invite more people. Raphael and I've been working on this offline, and some of you, if you have anybody you think is a good idea, please email me. If you have their contact details, or if you know them, even better, please include that, because otherwise it'll be difficult. Tim just sent a fantastic list of people, and I've started getting in touch with them. That's part of it. It's also a question of how big will volume 2 be compared to volume 1. What did you write there? We have one, actually.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Tom Standage.
Oh, of course. Yes.
But that was a Q&A, an interview. So if we can find other ways to do that, I think we absolutely should. I think,
well,
yeah.
You can make it write stories by simply typing a sentence and then asking it to complete the sentence. And there's an iterative interaction. I guess I can see why that would look like a Q&A. But I think there may be a way to generate, at least I read an example this morning of a story, which was about, I don't know, 300 or 400 words that was generated by a GPT-3.
I mean, what we could maybe do is feed volume 1 into GPT-3 as part of its data set.
Holy shit. Now there's a weird idea. Huh. Wow.
You can make that happen, right, Vint?
That reminds me. That reminds me of a very strange experience I had early on. Gosh, this was 2004. I found an article that I had written as a kind of a journalist, which had been translated into, I think, Norwegian, and then had been retranslated back into English using Google Translate.
I bet that was
What
hilarious.
was fascinating about it was that it had the quality of being universally implausible. So it sounded like it almost sounded as if it made sense, but actually it didn't make sense. And
Oh, no, that's just Norwegian.
I wrote an NPR essay about it called "The Euro of Gibberish." The whole notion of creating a universal currency that in fact was equally nonsensical anywhere.
Wow.
It's really interesting you should bring that up, Tim, because Vint talked about how it helps find facts, but it can also find non-facts. I do think that one of the things we should try to get into the second volume is much more nonsense, because nonsense is kind of the figure and ground to what is sense. And it's very hard to have one without the other, right?
You know, what I think Tim just said, I'm going to construct a quote around. You remember Ralph Nader, unsafe at any speed.
Yes.
What Tim just described is nonsensical in any language.
Yes, the Euro of Gibberish. Yep.
Yeah. That's cool. Jerry, you have your hand
But
up.
it just couldn't miss this. The other day, I've been translating some Hungarian poetry to a friend of mine, you know, things that I couldn't find on the internet. And then he said, well, you know, this is like Yoda speak. And then he did some research well, I told him that this is like Yoda speech. And then he did some research. Apparently, Yoda speak was produced by, they told to the Hungarian cameraman or whatever, the sentence and translated it back into Hungarian, then translated back literally. And then he ended up with Yoda speak, which is quite interesting. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Very cool. Right. So just in terms of bullet points, one of the things Valentina and I have been working on, of course, is the student competition. And the first time, I think we went a little overboard in terms of time and effort. One of the things we did, the student winner got a lot of signed books from a lot of the contributors. We're not going to do that this time. But what I think we should do is offer a relatively okay cash prize, because the first time we didn't do that because we didn't want, quote unquote, the wrong type of interested person. But now we have book one, we're trying to spread the word that the future of text in itself is a worthwhile topic. So I think that if people become interested in student competition to win a little bit of money, nothing wrong with that. We can have very strict criteria saying this is not a journalistic piece. So if you've written, you know, snippets from Wikipedia or whatever, it's quite simply not eligible. A few other things like that, it has to be personal, blah, 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 to make the judging easier. That may help. And we have a good database of journalists that we've, Valentina, roughly how many, is 500 or so? Not journalists, excuse me, teachers.
Teachers, yes, 500.
Yeah, so we
Across
can.
UK, US, and yeah, that's mostly it.
Yeah.
Do you have examples that you could exhibit that would qualify at least for consideration, and that might just by example sometimes is a good way of helping people understand criteria?
I think we could say book one is that, because that would encourage them to have a look at what was in, because the subtitle for the first book was 2020 Vision, which is a joke considering what happened that year. But for this one, it's a second look or something like that. So there's nothing wrong with future contributors really referring back to volume one.
Okay. Sure. Okay.
That's such an interesting voice recording. So other things to do with the book is, yeah, number one, get more people. Two, a little bit of marketing. I don't think we can do that much marketing because it's such a niche thing. And if I look at our sales on Amazon, it's actually kind of steady. There aren't that many PDFs or printed copies we sell, but it's a little bit, and it hasn't just dropped right off. There's a bit. So the community is growing. And Raphael and me both in different communities, we come across people who have heard of the book. So that's a good thing. So I don't think we need necessarily a huge marketing push. We just need to keep on going, right, guys?
Well, it's nice to know there's a long tail.
Yeah, the tail is happening. And also some of the exciting things with Visual Meta is the meetings we have Monday and Fridays, we spent a lot of time defining Visual Meta. And the current thing we are working on, which we kind of sorted out, is to take all the references of a paper into Visual Meta as well. So that means that you can have instant citation trees. And Mark Anderson, who couldn't make it today, he has done a huge amount of work on ACM hypertext, historical documents, cleaned up all the citation stuff, made an amazing tree, which Adam Byrne has turned into a graphical system. And once that's ready to show you guys, it's going to be amazing. The thing is, what we're doing with Visual Meta could automatically add to that. So that's been a bit of a breakthrough for us.
Wow.
I was thinking of, what you do for the office hours as an opportunity, to talk about all these things. The workshops, the salons from Interintellect, I feel like if we had, even I could organize some of those, but if we had like a weekly, maybe 1 hour talk about one of the texts or a couple of the texts in the first book, we could, continue the discussion on the topics of the future of text, while also opening the doors for different people to come and find out about the project. And that would be a way to do a little bit of marketing, as together with discussion, together with trying to find other people for the community. It seems like it's a win-win-win.
So what you're saying is that Monday and Friday is about the future, but we can have an additional hour, which is about what we've already done, to have dialogue around that. That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, correct.
I can reinforce that by telling you that there's a group at Google of programmers who are looking at papers from the 1960s and having discussions about them now.
Yeah.
They're mining these ideas from a long time ago that are still valid today.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we could do with a marketing eye to it is, can we package or structure these conversations so that it's then easy to repurpose as a podcast? Low effort, we just then publish the audio, and then it's just us spreading. And I know it won't be, immediate super success, but it does start to create more and more reverberation of this conversation. And at some point, it will get more people.
Are you trying to get a podcast?
I've been trying to do this forever, you know that. Because these conversations are so rich, and it's a shame that they stay within, closed walls, because they are very interesting. And sometimes the world of PR and media are interested in, the headlines. But now with podcasts, we have an opportunity to converse, which we didn't have before. And so I think it would be a good avenue.
I think that makes sense. These we release on YouTube, of course, but also one thing we have discussed, and I really want us to try to go back to, is getting famous people, because famous people are useful, or not necessarily super interested in this, but to interview them and then release that as audio podcasts, and the transcript goes in the book. So, we should try to reach out to more random people. What I really want is politicians, because they will talk a lot of, to use the term, gibberish, but just by them learning that there is a dialogue around that may be useful for them as well. When I say famous, within the community, I'm not talking about actors and singers necessarily. I'm talking about people who are very strong in their disciplines. Like, we're very lucky to have Ismail Sergeldin as part of the community. Of course, libraries, but still, he's also kind of a politician. So to have his perspective is phenomenal.
Well, I can think of a few politicians here in Washington that would certainly generate as much gibberish as you would like. Most of them are over on the right side.
That would be great. Well, the thing is, you know, we talked about gibberish quite a bit, and we're talking about knowledge. The thing is, so my son Edgar, who's not here today, unfortunately, so you don't get to see him. He is starting school in September, and he's going to be going to a Catholic school. You know, my wife and I are not particularly religious, but we would rather he goes to a school where we can talk about the ethics they teach him during the day and disagree and have a dialogue rather than somewhere neutral. So we definitely need a human center to this. And that's where other kinds of, you know, like, yeah, we're other perspectives other than we're trying to put text on a screen for it to make sense and to communicate. Because the human mind is just so much bigger than a literal logical sentence.
Do we have somebody from neuroscience already related to text?
We do, but I would like more. I tried Stanislas Dehaene twice, and I think he's too busy for us. But if someone can reach him and persuade him or someone similar, I think that would be fantastic. Also, I tried to get in touch with, hang on a second. This guy here, this is an incredible, incredible, incredible book.
What's the author? We can only see the title.
As
Oh,
long as you don't ask me to pronounce it, you can have a look.
Elkanan Goldberg. Interesting.
The book, it talks quite a bit about the prefrontal cortex, but it also goes into the real difference between the hemispheres. It's not creative and uncreative. It points out this is the one, the left is the one that knows, the right is the one that doesn't know. So they both learn at the same time. Anyway, I could bore you to tears with things you probably already know, but it would be great to have this in this kind of a world, because one of the things, of course, as most of you know, in Author, we now have a concept map, and it's developed in order to help get the concept into people's heads, not just on the screen. So to have neuroscience help us discuss things around graphs, because graphically, to put it that way, it's very easy to do fancy things with text, but what actually impacts and supports the human brain? The more science we could have on that, the better.
Sapolsky, Stanford. Book is titled Behave. Probably really well worth trying to get him to do an interview.
Let me just look them up.
I also like the idea of, from a marketing perspective, of jumping in the hype train of topics that are being discussed that are aligned with the future of text. And I think Neuralink is one of those that, you know, if they're going to embed chips in brains, how is text going to relate with brains? How are we going to absorb content or knowledge from that point of view? So it would be interesting to see from that side as well.
Well, there's an obvious transduction. And one of them is sound. I mean, a lot of people learn better by listening than they do by reading because of dyslexia, for example. And so producing text as sound is readily done today. And it's one of the ways in which people learn.
Yeah. Frode?
Yeah. Hi, Jerry.
Just I put it into the chat there. The ion hypothesis, I don't know how many people know this annotation tool. And they have this iAnnotate conference online this week. It's the last day, probably the best day still ahead of us. But if you notice, on Tuesday, we had a session on the future of note-taking, which really had 6 or 7 network thinking tool makers. And the consensus is that the vision, this is what's going to be discussed today, that it really the future of text in this sense, going from the small notes to this of the curation, the making sense of it, and the sharing, and the whole vision of hypothesis is to say, well, actually, why can't we have all these things, these complex things, really communicate with each other? Because at the moment, you have your note-taking tool, which you may be able to import it into one specific curation tool, but that's the end of the story. And so there is the participants in this space, the note-taking, note taking to write the annotators, the personal knowledge graph builders, the rogues of this world. They really, all of them coming together to create a better future for the text. So I certainly will take it as my mission. Hopefully there will be some communities forming here to really bring to the end of their attention the very fact that there is such a thing as future of text. Because obviously I don't think they know that there is a future of text, because, or they perhaps do, I don't know, but the future of note-taking is in that space. So I think I really very pleased to see that this is something which I always seen a possibility is really coming up. So we'll report next time how that is going. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that, Yuri. It is a very important community, and we're getting more dialogue with them. It is definitely an important part of the future of text. The thing that we have to keep reminding ourselves is how varied text is. There's individual people writing groups, people write, I got this book delivered today from the Polish Japanese Information Technology Center. Yes, such a thing exists. And it's really fascinating. It's a beautifully printed book. They also had a seminar series on the future of text to an extent, and that's how I found them. So they are very, very interested in the visual typography of text. And Tim is thinking about the different cultures of how text is written down. So we need to go further. We need to think in more directions of what we mean by text. And that doesn't mean, yes?
Yeah, if I could just jump in there. So as you've been talking, I've been thinking about, there is a print edition of my Atlas of Endangered Alphabets, which is due out next year, delayed by COVID, etc. And there's one section which is called Beyond the Alphabet. And what it does is to look at writing systems that are traditional writing systems in a variety of places, especially in Central and West Africa, but also elsewhere, where the notion of our notion of text is seen to be really limited. So you have, my favorite example is that in the Chokwe people in Angola and surrounding territory have a form of storytelling which combines what we would call text and mathematics and drama and animation. So what happens is the traditional storyteller is essentially imparting lessons of cultural wisdom, right, to boys passing through puberty. And what he does is he goes and squats down beside the river where there's wet sand, and he takes his two fingers like this, and using them essentially as a spacer device, makes a series of dots in the sand. And those dots are fascinatingly multidimensional. They may represent characters in the story. They may represent features of the landscape, sort of along the line of the song lines. But they may also represent, so to speak, story points. What he then does is he tells a story, but as he's telling a story, he traces a line that runs around these dots, never repeating itself, not missing out a dot. In fact, there's a whole school of mathematics that's now developed around this whole business of how do you create this pattern around this structure of dots. But it becomes a metaphor for storytelling, even as it's a story, because the story literally has twists and turns. As he's going along, where the story may take a turn, and so he may sort of suddenly go off on a right angle direction and go around a different set of dots. And like all good stories, it ends where it begins, but with a journey having taken place. So the completed story ends at the beginning place, but the narrative has become a journey in itself that you see, that you watch as it takes place. And So if we were to do something like this, we would have to use like Adobe After Effects or some kind of animation technique. And you realize that it is the art of storytelling made visual and dramatized as it takes place. It's extraordinarily compelling and mesmerizing because you are watching the line in the same way that when you listen to a story, you're wondering where it's going. And there's actually a YouTube channel with 4 of these. They're called Lusona, Lusona, which is the name of the YouTube channel. I don't know who made it. I have not been able to find out who made these, but there's a couple there that are absolutely riveting. And supposedly there is a corpus of several hundred of these. So one of the things that all of these non-alphabetic forms of representation show is how limited our understanding of writing actually is, because many of them are they assume that the éclat of the symbol is actually part of the act of writing and the act of comprehension. In some cases, these systems are non-linear, so they're more like maps, or cosmograms, as they're called in the Congo. And so I'll be happy to share this introduction that I wrote on these things called Beyond the Alphabet, because it really does highlight the sense that our sense of what text is the product of I think what I think of as a mistaken belief in evolution, that our writing system has evolved, whereas in my belief, it's narrowed to the point where many of the things that have traditionally been part of visual representation or text are now excluded from the definition of text. And now we are trying to re-import them by putting emojis, for example, in there, or by, using other forms of representation. In any event, if this is of any interest to you, I would be happy to send this along.
Yeah, that would be great. Maybe if you can post it on our Circle community
Sure.
pages, then we can, because we get summaries of that as well. That would be really
Okay.
cool.
That reminds me of Dr. Seuss' book, On Beyond Z, or maybe it was On Beyond Zebra or something like that. But he invented a whole bunch of new letters in the alphabet and then drew them for the children to read.
Yeah, I've had students do that as an exercise and an activity, and then it says, what kinds of meaning do you want to inculcate in the forms of the letters? And they are often much more imaginative and much more aware of what can be encoded. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's an important part of the future of text, no question. I'm not sure if I agree with the whole evolution point, but we certainly are we're not in the Cambrian explosion anymore, that's for sure. We're definitely in a plateau. No question about that. But hopefully we can agitate the environment enough to cause further experiments to happen.
We're actually seeing a kind of dying in a way. For example, script writing is evaporating from certainly the American system, if nowhere else. Kids can't read script anymore. They can only read print. And that's like the loss of species in some respects.
It really is. I think that will change because of technologies like tablets. Because even now with Apple, you can just write and it'll do very good recognition, not like the Newton back in the day. And my son Edgar is learning, he's 4, he's learning how to read and write. And it is tracing over the letters and all of that stuff. There is so many, as we all agree here, so many benefits to that. So I think that as we have different modes and different freedoms, we're going to go back to some of those. Because also, when you do the script writing, that's when you can add that doodle or that new thing. I honestly think it's coming back. And if I had a large research budget, that would be a strong part of figuring out how to do that.
The journaling community is bringing script back like big time. There's a lot of tutorials. There's a lot of tutorials on how to do different types of scripts, different types of fonts. But it's both script and calligraphy ended up falling into design as a profession. So if you want to do a nice script, you hire a designer instead of learning to do regular writing in that style.
When I was at the Chelsea School of Art, when it was still called the Chelsea School of Art, I remember writing stuff and they said, what are you doing? Use a typeface, don't make your own. Which I guess for that level, I was, it was fair enough, but as a wider picture, yeah, absolutely, that's a bit of a problem. So we have 10 minutes left, and I think it's been a really nice introduction. It's been very nice to have you here, Tim, with your vast experience and different perspectives. I appreciate the people you've already suggested. If you have more ideas, please tell me. Oh, you have to bail, but no, that's fine. Just saying thank you and welcome. And also, yeah, we'll keep going on expanding the book and promoting it. So yeah, see you at the next meeting, Tim.
Thank you.
Also, Tim,
Bye-bye.
So I just wanted to show you that.
Sorry, Valentina, did you want to say something to Tim? Just real quick.
No, yeah, just in general, I'm trying to get more women and more diversity. See if there's anybody on your list that fits that.
Oh, absolutely.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
Good.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Okay. Yeah. See you later, Tim. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Sorry, Vint, were you drawing dots?
Well, I wanted to show you the future of note-taking, and the reason that I still use a pen and ink and paper. I was trying to capture what Tim was saying about the storytelling, and that was my little rendering of it. And then I realized that it reminded me of Hamiltonians and the 7 bridges of Königsberg.
Yeah, good point.
Problem, a mathematical problem, which is not solvable, it turns out. Or at least you can show that there does not exist a path that goes through all the bridges without crossing one of them more than once.
Yeah, don't inspire more software development issues, Vint, please.
Sorry.
One of the issues I've been dealing with over the last few months is when you're reading and learning, when you come across something in a book or a paper or whatever, where should that note go? Should it go in the margin? Should it be a highlight? Or should it be in a research document or research system? Or should it be in where you're writing? These are tricky things, and they are being finally, over the last few years, being investigated very much by different communities. But we still have a long way to go. It would be fantastic to have digital handwritten and to be able to insert the notes, but in a way that you can then find later.
Yeah, well, this is an example of the medium determining what you can and can't do. So I have now broken my earlier belief that books are pristine and don't write in them, and I find myself annotating them all the time. When I go back and discover the annotations, it's fascinating because I may have a different view at the point, and it's interesting to compare, or just to be reminded of what this triggered in my thinking. The problem, of course, is that there isn't any other way than finding the damn book physically again to see that. And so you're quite right that if there were a different way of capturing that so that it could appear in more than one place, it's like the difference between physical filing folders and having the ability to put something in more than one folder without having to physically copy, paper, for example. And it's this multi-filing capability that's so wonderful in the online environment, which is very difficult and expensive to replicate in the physical environment.
So in Apple's new iPad OS, there is a new type of a note thing where you can take notes from anywhere. That's actually developed by my professor when I got my master's degree's son. Will Thimbleby, Harold Thimbleby, you've met him, Vint, in Southampton Future of Text. Harold is one of those supreme geniuses where everything is amazing and then he's out of the room, he kind of forgets we exist. So, he was amazing doing the masters. He's just an incredible guy. And his son, he did his first work where handwriting mathematics and the system would solve it. That was his work, incredible. So now he has a job at Apple where he can do anything he likes. He has no job description. He decided to do this, and he was part of the keynote. But it does seem like it is really worthwhile making what you just showed us, Vint, digital and real and connected from your search space. We need kind of a, excuse me for saying it, but like a personal Google for your own mind.
Yeah.
Of course,
yeah.
that's what Roam and Notion are trying to do, but they are really designed for engineering nerds who like to have links in hard brackets. We need to widen the opportunity for mindsets to use these things.
One
Have
obvious,
have you heard about MyMind? I sent the link on chat. It's basically just keep throwing things in there, and they use a little bit of machine learning to tag the thing. So if you put a photo in this platform, then it tags everything that is in this photo. You don't have to do it manually, and then you can just search all of the contents. But my issue with it is that it's completely unstructured. You have like zero input on the organization of the content. You just search whatever is in there. But it came to mind, and it's from this guy. He's pretty popular in the design community.
Looks
forgot
very
his
impressive
name.
visually.
What was that?
It does look very impressive visually.
Yeah.
so I'm just having a look at my at it too.
So
There is an organizing possibility here. Think about how I got to this by going to my calendar and clicking on it. One of the things that'd be quite nice would be to imagine that the reference to this recording, the notes that I took and everything else are at least ingested in that calendar entry. So at least there's a timeline. And I had a discussion with Frode, on whatever date this is, 25th of June. If I could at least remember it was a scheduled discussion, it's in my calendar somewhere, being able to retrieve all of that from the calendar would be nice. And once it's in digital form, it's also potentially indexable in a variety of other ways.
yeah, been for at least 15, 20 years with people in California, we've been discussing timeline things. It's such a hugely potentially important thing. And there's, of course, so many problems with the implementation, but it's just to find pictures. Just click on a calendar day and show all the pictures I took that day. It seems to be so obvious, but there are all kinds of market issues. But also to obviously evangelize on visual meta, we had the idea of having a visual meta after the normal visual meta for annotations. So that means that whatever you've written your notes, whatever you've done, is accessible to the system to find in whatever thing you put it in.
Yeah, that's a really nice feature.
I think that if I can throw enough resources at it, the iOS version of Reader, even if you write the handwritten note in the margin because of their Scribble API, that should be able to then go into the visual meta at the end. So when you're on your Mac or wherever and you look for the text, it should be able to show it to you instantly.
Well,
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I haven't tested yet the new note taking on the iPad. I wanted to know if you already installed the developer version, Frode, to test it out.
Yeah, I'm still trying to break the point to my wife that I may actually have to buy an iPad since we're doing an iPad version. So there was that. And then it's time to play with a pencil.
Has anybody trademarked the term Notiki?
Notiki?
Notiki.
Well, we'll tell you in about 3 seconds.
Because that's kind of what we're trying to do here.
I think that's really actually quite emotional because one of my father's good friends was Thor Heyerdahl's son. So Thor Heyerdahl doing the Kon-Tiki expedition.
Oh, that's Kon-Tiki, but I'm thinking Notiki because in note-taking tiki.
Yeah, no, exactly. So Kon-Tiki was about how to navigate. and taking
Right.
it into Notiki, I think is quite beautiful. Raphael, did you find anything?
No, you're, yeah, Raphael, we
Is it
couldn't hear you.
Notepiki? No.
I thought, you know, I'll put it in, it was just Notiki.
Yes, if we look up, let me just say.
There's a live journal, but there doesn't seem to be any kind of company with it. I haven't looked in the business database, but Notiki Bello. No, there's articles about it using this term, but no project specifically.
No, I don't see anything either. Well, I think maybe I should go and register that.
Unless we beat you to it.
Oh, well, yeah, I suppose you could do that.
There is a company in Germany called Visual Meta.
There is.
Really annoying. So I've been having to wonder if maybe the name needs to change there.
Oh, there is a notiki.com. It says ready for development. If you're interested in this domain, contact us.
Oh, okay.
Ready for development.
Several bad words occur to me. Okay, I need to jump on another call too, but this was really, really interesting. Thanks so much for bringing Tim into the picture too.
Yeah, it's slow getting the right kind of people, but when we get them, it's really, yeah, pretty damn good. So good.
And I love it how one brings like an extra 5.
Yeah, exactly. And Vint, don't party too hard this weekend. We know it's your birthday weekend.
Thanks very much. I think I'm just gonna relax.
Have a nice birthday then.
That's the party too.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much, everybody. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye for now.
Bye.
So I'm wondering, oh, we lost Valentina as well. That's fair enough, because now we're into the second hour. Wondering if we should look a little bit more at specific names. I think quite a few of our normal Friday people are not here today for different reasons. What do you think, Raphael?
I would like maybe to propose like an activity focusing on books. So if we take this time, I would go, through things that I have and then start writing names down, and then we can compile a list as the meeting goes. And we can even maybe discuss why some person would be interesting and another person would be interesting. I don't know. But that would be focused on authors. I don't know if that's the main focus, because you mentioned politicians. There's a bunch of other people.
Yeah, no, authors are great, and continue with authors because they clearly are interested in text, at least to some degree. But yeah, we should also go in different directions, both.
True.
Just looking at the note I wrote for Vint there.
Get my hard drive. Oh, I actually don't have a spare USB to connect my hard drive. That's so silly. With 4 USB-Cs, I'm probably gonna need a hard drive. This will work. Is Edgar learning Japanese as well? Reading, writing?
No, he's not really. He's learning a little bit of English reading and writing, but it was he goes to Japanese nursery, and it's interesting. I saw a video on YouTube this week where they said that learning language is almost entirely about comprehensible input. You know, like this is a phone, that kind of thing.
Yes.
And I found that interesting. So we're not trying to push him for Norwegian or Japanese, but today him and Emily were at a restaurant and I was too busy. So I came by for a minute. And then it was a Japanese restaurant and he did actually manage to say something in Japanese that I had no idea that he knew. It's a normal thing. So that was amazing, but he's not, yeah. Alan is here.
Hello.
Hello. You're joining us for the normal Friday, not the monthly Friday.
Oh, I thought it was going to be the monthly one, but I had a few minutes, so I thought I'd say hello.
No, that's cool. Absolutely welcome. Yeah, no, we had an interesting session. Tim Brooks is new in the community, so he introduced himself. He's interested in marginalized languages. Obviously, there's a lot more to it than that. Vint was here for a while. We discussed that. We also discussed maybe putting the whole volume 1 into GPT-3 and writing based on that just for fun and lots of fun things. But towards the, well, one of the things we need to do is to invite more people. But one of the things that tickles my builder brain, inventor brain, or whatever the least pretentious term would be, is we were also talking about note-taking, and we were talking about how important it is to be able to write stuff, not just keyboard, but, you know, scripts, and, you know, do doodles at the same time. Vint held up a doodle that he had made on the call. So I'm thinking, with the visual meta thing that we're doing, we have an architecture where at the end of the visual meta, there is a separate page visual meta that has all the annotations of that document. So that if you write something in the document while you're reading it, that will automatically be added to that. That means that the system, whatever software can read PDFs with visual meta, will know what your annotations are. So let's say you write in the margin on an iPad just with scripts. This is an interesting Shakespeare reference. That then goes to this added visual meta. The system knows that when you look through your documents, whether they're PDFs or whatever they are, this document contains a comment that you've made about Shakespeare.
So the first question about that, even though I love the idea, does that open the gates to version control or
Yes.
community annotation? Like suddenly, do you need do you keep track of versions of annotations? Do you have other people that are annotating the same thing?
I'm not myself focused on community. I'm more focused on one-on-one reading. Community, I annotate. Hi, Duke. He's still connecting.
So Frode,
Yeah.
there's this woman called Brooke Gladstone. She wrote this The Influencing Machine. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Oh, very interesting.
And it's about, media. So I'm pretty sure it's text plus media.
Sure.
And she would be somebody interesting because it's a graphic novel. So it's really, really nice to read.
If you want to invite her, I think that would be very cool.
Okay, I'll write it down.
So yeah, Duke, just hi.
Hey.
We just started the second hour. We had the monthly meeting. Now we're on to the weekly meeting. So just talking to Alan about having a visual meta appendix after the visual meta appendix only for your own annotations. Hypothesis and so on, they do great kind of shared annotations. So I'm sure there can be some kind of architectural integration. But the idea here is simply the question of when you're reading a document or a book or whatever it might be, and you come across something interesting, your thought about that interesting thing, should it be stored in the document, in a note-taking system, or in what you're writing? That is a really annoying problem. So the idea here is write it in the place you want to write it, whether it's a napkin virtually or the document, but make the system be aware of that. So when you're looking at some kind of an overview space, it doesn't matter where you wrote it. You're not prisoner to one environment.
So we're talking about when you say writing, I'm thinking of three different things. there's, I want to take a note that I'm typing. There's the value of writing in the margins, literally, like I like the freedom of a whiteboard, if you will. So that means containing imagery. And then there's the writing in a sense of, I want to add sort of in a loose graphical, less formal graphic sense. I want to add an attribute to a relation, or I want to relate to things, but I don't necessarily want a formal relation.
Right. So the reason I'm thinking about this is I've been bullied into doing Reader for iPad.
Great.
Yeah, I wasn't really ready, and it's going to be expensive, but I think we have no choice. So the opportunity that I just mentioned offline could be massive for the whole piloting of this kind of approach. And the reason I decided to do the iPad is partly for that community to have an iPad reader for this, but also because we have to re-architect everything. It means there'll be more shared code between author and reader. And as a consequence, we can then release the parsing code for Visual Meta. So anybody who wants to put it into their project, because of the way this has to be changed, it's ready for them. Just take it and paste it in.
That's exciting.
And because it is iPad, that means that there is the scribble feature in iOS. So hopefully, if you do write in the margin, we should be able to use their technology to make that stay as a graphic, whatever you want, but at the end of the document, Visual Meta, it has it as readable text with a location that whatever system that hasn't even been thought about yet, when you query your stuff, you can find out that you wrote a certain thing on a certain PDF.
Okay. So, and thanks for clarifying. Why I asked that is because it's exciting to expand to that. The trick is, where do you draw the line? Meaning, suddenly are you saying you can load up images as an annotation, and then it becomes this data store of just all of your, it's a scrapbook of all your thoughts around X paper? Yeah.
It's really, really annoying, because I think we need a couple of $1 million, because there are some obvious things that just has to be done. I mean, having late night coffees with friends in California over the last decade, one of the things we kept talking about is a timeline. And Vint brought it up today. In his calendar, why can't he go back to the date of a meeting and see the transcript? Why can't he see what pictures were taken that day? This seems so obvious, but it's technically low-hanging fruit. A bit of an integration issue, but then there is the commercial issue. How do you actually get people to use it, right? How do you fund this stuff? Because I have no problems with integrating non-textual elements into something like this.
Okay. Yeah, agreed. It gets out of hand pretty quickly, but it's all pretty necessary.
Yeah, and I mean, going back to Doug kind of thinking, views, time is a very important view. My teacher from university from a billion years ago, a couple of years ago, he mentioned something that seemed really stupid, and he's not a stupid man, so I had to think really, really hard. He said that GPS for maps has really changed the world. What about for knowledge? And that seemed so nonsensical until in dialogue, I realized he meant that we got to have some holding points in knowledge, and time is one of those. An event happened in one time and it'll stay at that time, and that is one really important navigation point.
Gosh,
Yeah.
the only one.
I would add
The only one really in a computer. It's a stream of writing.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you just put a keyboard logger on your self, if you could rewind directly in time everything that you write.
Yeah, I mean, there are many ways to do this. And one of the things, the dream that I look at it is, so we're having this conversation today, and let's say that we get some major breakthrough, right? I want to be able to go to our diary, calendar, timeline, whatever we call it, and in 10 years in the future, and because it's time-based, we can look at the fact that Alan was stuck in traffic earlier. Maybe that's why he had this brainwave. Or there was extra high pollen count. or Bitcoin collapse. I don't care what it is, but because time events is stuck to time, it means we can do comparison to see what may have influenced, where overlaps have been that will be relevant in the future.
On a smaller scale, oh, go ahead, Duke. Or
Oh, just real quick, in a decision matrix where time is of the essence and you make a decision quickly and you record that decision in a collaboration, then time becomes a real programming tool, not just a fetch, a finder, but an actual action item. So if you're challenged with, a problem and you have to respond, and then you timestamp it, great. Because then you have a consensus building in a stream of time.
yeah, along with that, I would say what I think on a smaller scale, because a lot of times just time is too broad to talk about. I think what gets overlooked often is just capturing sequences, right? So the fact that I'm reading something and it reminds me of something else and I make a link or an annotation or a note may have everything to do with the book that I was reading 10 minutes earlier, or the bit of news that I saw. And that's what set my mind here. So capturing sequences in small spots, I feel it's overlooked, but it adds, at least for me, in one of the ways that I take notes, or in the just broad category of things I find interesting, is I leave an intentional kind of sequential chain. So that I find that if the thing itself doesn't remind me, then usually if I look at what I saw before that, it'll put my head back in that space, and now I can remember what it was that I thought was so interesting.
Context.
Yes.
Have you seen how we've implemented concept maps in Author?
Yes, and I have a lot of thoughts and comments on that. If it's still the same what I saw maybe 2 months ago.
Not sure. I'll leave it up while you come with your comments. Actually, I'll do a 30-second run through, shall I?
Sure.
Okay, so you can double click, add any text, move it anywhere you want. If you connect text, you do it by defining. So here on Waze, Command D for define. Frode Hagelin is a PhD student. I wrote that. That's why there's a line to me. Click on or point to the line and it shows the sentence that generated that. So going from me to there, it'll be different. So Visual Meta has this, but you can also have one-way connections. It's really important that this connects based on this. It's only going from what you have selected. Otherwise, there's too many lines on the screen. And I use the example of, let's say, we are all fans of the new musical movie In the Heights, for instance. We may have that as an important part of who we are in this context and have a description to In the Heights. But In the Heights doesn't really care about us as individuals. So It would be very messy if all relationship has to be shown. That's why this system is exclusively based on the definitions written. That's what you think you were referring to, right?
Yes. Yes. I should have been more prepared. I don't immediately have my thoughts on the concept map, so I'm going to stretch and try and recall what some of them were. But I'm guessing what it has to do with is, so I remember the last example you had to say, like, let's just take Tim Berners-Lee, World Wide Web, CERN, and you can connect all of these as you showed, but you only want to show one connection at a time, and then show the relation between them. And where this, I guess I was sensing that even this would become problematic at scale. One of the ways that it becomes problematic is writing explicitly what the relation is between the two. So it would be fascinating if you could highlight some text and then define it and say, this is the relation between Tim Berners-Lee and www that I care about right now.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there are many scale issues and interaction issues. Somebody wanted a keyboard shortcut to highlight all the lines, select everything on the screen at the same time, things like that.
Right.
You know, these are interesting issues. And as the system develops, I think we'll look into it. But the key really is it's not augmenting the computer, it's augmenting your brain as you're learning. So it's really about forcing you to write those. Who was it who used the term? Somebody in this community said something like deliberate or explicit connection making. Because it is what you care about for your work. And I don't know if you remember this, but this is what I think is so exciting. So once this is done and you have a PDF document, let's just see here. So for instance, so I'm going to have to move you guys out of the screen. So Doug Engelbart, I select Doug Engelbart and I do Command F for find. The find results are here. The gray bit is the glossary term, because the definitions you saw in the mind map are actually glossary terms, but we don't call them that. And that's what I think is so exciting, because now if you click on my name, it loads my definition. If you click on Visual Meta, it loads that one. So you're doing a transversal exactly the same as in the concept map. Here it just happens to be text-based as a glossary, connected glossary. Yeah, sorry, the last one wasn't defined.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. And actually, that was another point that sort of relates, but the comments that are in the modal live only in the modal in the concept map, or are they also in the visual meta at the end in the appendix?
It's even simpler. They are in the glossary like this.
And this is what you've written to associate, say, Tim BL with www.
You don't write to associate, you write to define.
Okay.
So if let's say, let's simplify and just say he invented it. Most, did I write it? How did I write it in the? Sorry, I did it in.
Okay.
That's it. So now that line is there. Nothing happens here.
Interesting.
In fact, let's go into normal mode. Let's go to the top of the document just to make it easy for myself. Put his name, export the document. Call it version D. And so here we go. We select Tim Berners-Lee, excuse me, Command F. That didn't work. Why did that not work? He's not included in the, okay, there's some kind of an issue. That's interesting. Let me just move you down there. Okay. Oh, of course, I did the wrong thing. I wrote the World Wide Web as a definition. He doesn't exist in the glossary yet.
Oh, that's interesting.
So therefore, what I should have done is just take that text and put that here just randomly, and then we export that again. Takes a bit of time to export. It has to build a whole PDF and then, yeah, replace that. Boom, okay. So we go back to introduction. That's not right. Okay, select World Wide Web, Command F. He still doesn't have a definition, so there's no further links to follow. because, you know, Command F is just find all the occurrences. So it's just a bonus if the text happens to have a glossary definition. It shows up here.
I love it. All right.
So that's why this is really focused on the act of authorship, of thinking, of having, because if you write something and it's just not right, then you correct it, just like a normal sentence. See, now you can keep going back and forth between them, seeing the relationships.
And it associated despite the capitalization. That's great.
Yeah. That's been, thanks for noticing, that's been a bit tricky. I'd like to have the word I, because if someone reads the document and come across I, who the hell are you? So you should be able to search for I. And then of course, every word with I in it would show up. So we had a little bit of normal processing stuff.
It's been a particular interest of Ian Niels there, and it is a fascinating problem that I see in the enterprise quite a bit. So many acronyms for the same concept. Some are informal, some are more formal.
Indeed. This kind of glossary, by the way, it goes by the document. It's not universal yet. So if you make a new document, you just have to copy any text from your old document into the new one, and all the glossary terms come. It's a bit of a kludge, but it does mean that once this is made a little bit easier, as you keep making your own glossary, you take it with you.
Frode,
Yeah, Jerry.
sorry, I just got to go, and very interesting. Sorry, I got to go. Yeah.
Okay, say hi
you next
to everyone in the annotation community. Bye for now.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye, Jerry. I have to run too, but I'm very curious as to, I hope to attend more, maybe the monthly meeting next time, but is the iPad app you're imagining going to be a combination of author and reader?
No, it's going to first be reader, because the thing is, to be honest, making money at the moment is really, really hard. We've got okay download numbers, we've got great reviews, but for some reason people aren't paying for the in-app option of export, which it baffles me because that's what makes it useful. So we're going to do reader because it's easier, but also because it gives us that benefit of redoing the code so we can share the visual meta parsing. But it makes sense, you know, you want to read a page like this, portrait mode. So we're going to start with that.
Yeah.
Depending on what we can afford to, oh, hang on, I have to open the door 1 second.
Raphael, has there been any talk of expanding to ebooks?
No.
Oh, no? Okay.
The idea is to read it in Reader.
Now, the reason for that is EPUB and all of those things are really fascinating formats. And I used to passionately hate PDF. But PDF has two benefits. One is it can be nicely laid out, which a lot of people care about. But also, unless you invest in the tools, you cannot edit a PDF properly. You know, and also you have addressability gains. Page 3 is page 3, and in EPUB, it can be anything. So there are many issues there. And also, my primary user base is students handing in a paper. So they can hand it in as Word if they have to, or as PDF, and it's formatted the way that they want.
Is the book on archive.org already, Frode?
I don't think so. Can you please check, Raphael?
Yeah, because once you upload it to archive.org, you can download an EPUB because they convert it to every single format that exists.
Oh, the book is also in EPUB. It is.
Yeah,
Sorry.
but it's funny that even with that, or unless I'm mistaken, it's still formatted. I have the EPUB, and I believe it's still formatted as if it is a PDF, just visually, meaning you have page breaks versus fluid. I could be wrong about that.
It would be a page break in between articles, for sure.
Okay.
Because what we did with the EPUB, I had to just pay someone to do that.
Apologies. I got to get back to the grind. Talk soon.
Back to the real world. See you later.
Yeah, it's not there yet, Frode. Do you want to upload it? Should we upload it?
Yeah, please take the version that is downloadable from the website.
Okay. I'm looking at my book collection, and I wrote a couple of names down as well.
Thanks.
The guy from the book, what's his name? James Gleick.
Oh, okay.
The book, The Information.
Mm-hmm.
He would be interesting.
He would be great. Yeah, good idea. I'm not sure. I don't think I've tried to get in touch with him.
There's another person called Jorge Arango. I don't think he's Brazilian though. He has two books. One is called Living in Information. It's a newer book, came out I think last year. And he's also the author of Information Architecture by O'Reilly, which is one of the Bibles for information architecture. It's really, really good.
Absolutely have to invite him.
I'm thinking Seth Godin, because he always has a lot of good topics and discussion, and his blog has been going on since forever. And he posts every single day.
Yeah, I think that would be great if Seth would be interested in this. Good idea.
And then there's Abby Covert. She has a book called How to Make Sense of Any Mess. It has to do with both information and knowledge in general. Seems quite nice. I haven't read it yet, but it's on my list.
Yeah, well, that sounds like, yeah, definitely the approach.
And then I'm gonna keep writing down some authors that I have here.
Very cool. So how have you been doing, Duke?
I've been on hiatus. I mean, stop. I'm trying to watch Abby Covert. I'm kind of on hiatus, but I'm hoping to get back into this. I got information overload. Too much information. I couldn't see anything what was important. I just was getting crushed. So I kind of cut off for a while. And, you know, we'll get back in. We'll get back in.
Yeah.
To me,
No, I'm just saying, yeah, I hear what you're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, there's sophisticated legions of scientists, super smart people who are capturing our attention, and they're doing a very effective job of it. I get on YouTube, I'm gone. See you later. But I really hope that a decision-making matrix that includes the future as well as the past is the way to manage knowledge. So you can make a creative challenge. Let's figure out this. So you can get participants backing it at very, very kind of nano payment scale. And then everybody on Earth can afford to participate in any bet. And then you can go to the future. And of course, one of the things to fund is, you know, my own private dictionary. How great. And then how those merge is really wonderful. But personally, I believe everybody should have a wiki, and that when people write into their wiki, it should be private by default. A signature should validate that information. It should be very, very robust. I'm afraid of AI that's going to come and rewrite everything and confuse the hell out of people. So matrix to trust the information that you create in the past with real focus on basic crypto seems like a good foundation to do an information architecture.
I want to jump in on what Duke was saying on regarding information overload. And, you know, I feel the same way when I jump on YouTube, you know, I'm also gone. One of the things that I tend to think about quite a lot is an aspect of just enough, the concept of just enough. So if, for example, if you want to know about information architecture, if you want to know about Bitcoin, what is the just enough you should know, to wrap your head around it so that you don't go down the rabbit hole. So you have this environment that has, just enough for you to.
Are those memes?
Huh?
Are those memes? Where some pithy, witty summary also puts some kind of very subjective, opinionated light on a subject of interest. Are those just enough?
Huh. That's interesting. I haven't thought about memes, but memes are incredible because they do precisely that. But I feel that they're too much surface level.
Oh yeah.
And for example, if you want to know about an apple, what is an apple? You could dive down a rabbit hole of like how to plant an apple. How do I make different recipes with apples? What is apples used for? What are the benefits of apples? Like there's this whole universe regarding apples that you could, if you're interested in apples, you can dive in. But what's the just enough of the universe of apples that you could find about?
Wikipedia. First paragraph. But it's never enough, is it?
No, it's never enough. It's never enough. Because the just enough would be a compilation of different kinds of media. So you could have a photo of an apple, you can have a little video of a drone flying through an apple orchard, and then you can have the description of an apple. You could maybe have, one recipe, but the just enough would be a compilation of the things that are most common in life about that topic. Does that make sense? It's like an expanded encyclopedia in a way, but it makes it that once you read that just enough, then you don't have to go into the rabbit hole unless you want to, and it's easier to find the just enough of things. I don't know if
Yeah, it depends on the context. Like Apple computer or a practice of health, an apple a day, or you could do a picture of an orange and get all Magritte on people. It's sort of endless, and then all of those go and web into everything else.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it becomes this very, very, very heavy mess to be dragging around all this memory and trying to make sense of the past. That's why I'm going to argue that if we involve the future, we can address attention towards increasingly, what did Doug call them? More and more complex, accelerating problems coming our way.
I agree.
In the future.
I agree.
So, that's a loaded topic. But that's one of the reasons I kind of tuned out of the conversation, is because it's, geez, all of us are trying to manage the past. All of us are trying to figure out how to take this gigantic, sorry, public, I can't do the image, this gigantic mess in the past, but how do we apply that for the problems that we're dealing with?
I mentioned this because if you think before the web, and you had, encyclopedias were a source of, like, if you had an encyclopedia, you had all the knowledge in the world because it was compiled in an encyclopedia. And that encyclopedia was, just enough that you needed. I know, air quotes.
Yeah, because it is very, very skewed. You can't speak Yanomamo. You can't do other cultures. You get a Britannica. It's the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Exactly.
So it's colonial.
I agree. But it is a complicated topic because it does go in a lot of different directions.
Yeah. So the thesis is that if we can do offers to crowdfund the future of text somehow and engage people in something like memes, have everybody's attention, then maybe we could energize what our common goal, which is to take this medium that's now electronic and make it serve people better. But I can talk it. I don't know how to do it. People just look at me like I'm crazy. So anyway, I that's probably when I get back into this, what I have to build is an action-oriented stream, time stream. It makes you decide fast and program the future of text, for example.
I wonder if there's a way to copy from normal Apple Calendar and have the copy include the date. Does it include the date? Let's see. Okay, interesting. Just things like, you know, transcripts and videos. If you know where they are from specific meetings, they should be very easy to find. Anyway, that's a big thing. So yeah, Raphael, we will probably continue this on Monday. I'm a little stressed waiting for that acronym company to get back to me about
Sure.
the visual.
I'll keep compiling a list of names here, and then I'll send it your way, and then we can start trying to invite more people.
Should we start half an hour early on Monday to go through your list?
Yeah, I don't mind. I'm free.
Okay, that would be great. I will put that in here. That's not what I meant to do. Hang on. Yeah, we'll just meet on the same channel, right?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Okay, guys, it was good. Have a good weekend. And so it's a good weekend for you, Raphael, because you're going towards warmer times. We're going towards colder times. Oh, you're muted.
Winter has come.
I can imagine it's probably below 30 or something crazy. All right, have a good weekend and see you guys. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.